Hey, what's going on, Cashflow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180, and I'm on the road right now, so I apologize for the camera angles and all that stuff. But somebody sent me an IUL illustration that they wanted me to review. I'm not sure if I'm even going to launch this, but obviously, if you're watching it, I did launch it. But I figured if I'm going to do this, I might as well create a video around it just to put more value out there into the world. So that said, what I'm going to do is I want to just jump right into this. This is something that I love to do. I love to break down IUL illustrations and kind of give people more clarity and more understanding about how they actually work and what goes into it. So that said, I need to go here. Sorry, here. I gotta go here. Why is it doing this? There we go. There we go. All right. So, all right, here's what we got. So we have somebody who was doing a premium of $49,236 or $263 every year for 5 years. You can see it stopped at 5 years, and it's going down from there. It says zero every single year. Now, one of the things that I think is really important to understand is that this, you can see here, it's got no information on it. Current, non-guaranteed ledger. All the information that was sent to me by this client, so to speak, the person who's actually thinking about this, all of the information sent to me on this is what I'm going to show you. There were a couple marketing documents that pitched the IUL, so to speak, but there was not really any other information that was provided. And so this is actually not even a compliant way to sell. So if in fact, and I don't know the answer to this, but if in fact the agent did send this information without sending the entire full illustration with all the disclosures and everything that goes with it, this agent deserves to lose their license, in my opinion, because it's ridiculous. So you can see here though, $49,000, close to $50,000 a year, year one. The one thing that this thing has going for it that I think is positive is that you have a level death benefit right here. Now, the challenge is, I'm going to read through this because I'm doing this live and on the fly with you, meaning I have not really done a breakdown on this. And so at this point, I haven't even looked through it yet. So this is my first time going through it. I'm just looking through the numbers and sharing my reaction raw and real with you as I look at it. So because it's a level death benefit, what's going to happen is you have a higher surrender value that's available year one. So out of the 49,000, you have 26,518 as a surrender value. This policy for an IUL, it's actually pretty well designed. The policy value you can see here is about 90% of the account value. Then we have the surrender charges that bring it down to liquidity of 26,518. I'm not saying it's a good policy as a whole. I'm just saying that as far as how it could, on the scale of good and bad for an IUL, it's actually well designed on the scope of things that I see on a day in, day out basis. Okay, so you can see here, total outlay and cumulative premium right here. You got $246,000. He's saying here's a break-even point. It's a rounding error, but like here's where they're actually even not here. Okay, so you're technically ahead at this point in time with the basic assumptions of a 7% return every single year. Now, one of the things that's really important to understand here is that I just think, and history shows, that this 7% number is just an unrealistic number to bank on. They allow people to illustrate this. Remember, if you're only putting, I'm going to read this. I haven't even read this yet. So remember, you're only putting in 50,000 at a time. It'll take 5 years to actually get the full $250,000 in the account. So this person is doing, the agent, let me go over and change my pen. This agent is doing what's called, why isn't it doing this? It's doing what's called the Guideline Level Premium test, right? So he's funding it up to the Guideline Level Premium test. Okay, so what that happens is they're going to be restricted ultimately for putting more money in after that. So you're doing the 49,000 and change every year for 5 years, year 1 through 5, but like you see the 49,000 $49,263, and year 6 and beyond, up until infinity, basically, it shows $0 premium outlay. The problem is just because you see that 0 premium outlay doesn't mean there aren't costs and fees associated in the policy. It just means it's what we call a vanishing premium. You can never actually pay this policy up, even if you see zeros in that column. That's the difference. A big difference between whole life insurance and IUL is that with whole life, when you see a 0 in this column, here, I'm not used to doing this on this pad here. When you see a 0 in this column here with an IUL, what happens is it's not really paid up. You still have fees and charges and stuff going on in the background, so you need to know where to look on the illustration to see what those are. The reality is this illustration is just that. It's an illustration with hypotheticals. It's showing a 7% rate assumption. It's showing positive years every single year, and it's not showing the charges and fees and how the credits work based on crediting, based on if the market goes up or down. The reality is that the market is going to go down 35% of the time, historically, okay? And if you look at that historically 35% of the time, and all it shows in this is 100% of the time positive results, it skews everything. Now, that's that thing. So what happens, and just to show here, it's a level death benefit, but what happens is as time goes on, it's showing the cash value increasing. But here's the bottom line. This illustration is only as good as toilet paper at this point in time, because I pretty much can guarantee it won't happen like that. But just so you understand what you're looking at, the reason the death benefit goes up here is because as soon as you have the cash value hit a certain level, you have to have what's called a MET corridor, meaning there has to be a spread of life insurance between the 495,000 and the 520,000. So that difference of say 25,000, just to keep it even, is the MET corridor, which is basically like 5% because of the fact you're 86 years old at this point in time. My question to anybody who's going to do something like this would be like, what is the goal for this? If you were to tell me that your goal for this was to use living benefits and was to never touch this cash value, and you were never going to borrow against it for tax-free income, and you were just going to use it from a death benefit play, legacy play, long-term, and create leverage, or you were going to use it for living benefits, and that's the only reason you were going to use it, and you had zero expectation of using the cash value, then I would say this policy could actually work, right? It's like a great alternative to a long-term care plan, and that perspective. But the problem is, my guess, and I don't know this because I wasn't on the call, but my guess is that's not the way that this was sold. So then we go down here, and you can see this is just the next ledgers. Once again, she probably pulled her information off, but I can tell you, see how these illustrations right here, I could pretty much guarantee what happened was the person exported the illustration from whatever software they were doing. They plugged it in. These are Excel bars. On a normal illustration, those don't happen. And so all the information, this is just, they tried to extract the ledger. They try to, this is a very deceptive sales practice that a lot of people do. And honestly, whoever is being sold this, I would hope that they report the person that's selling this, if indeed they are selling it like this without sharing. Once again, here's the Excel ledger pages right there. You would not have those outlines that you can see if we look really closely right here, these outlines right here. You wouldn't see those on an illustration, okay? All right, let's see what they say in the comments before looking through, because this is going to show the internal rate of return, okay? This ledger shows the value as an investment. So first of all, now, I actually was just talking to an attorney yesterday who is one of the top IUL litigation attorneys in the country, and he was saying that as soon as an IUL agent starts utilizing the word investment and they're not registered to sell investments and they're trying to position an IUL as an investment, that's where the bulk of his lawsuits are won, because these things never perform the way that they're illustrated and sold as investments. And in fact, when you look at that, it's kind of scary that they're able to do it. And it's just proof in the pudding I've actually got it set up. We're gonna be doing some content together, me and this attorney, because I think he's got a lot of really good stuff to share. So focusing on the tax. Okay, so this ledger shows the value as an investment, focusing on the tax equivalent yield net of fees. The fees get lower the longer you live. If death happens early, then your heirs get the $500,000 death benefit immediately and tax-free. All right, so the death benefit immediately and tax-free, cool. But the internal rate of return net of fees, you can see here, net of fees, cash surrender value, internal rate of return is going to be the number. This is, you can see, like, if you're 65, here's what I would say to you. You're 65, like, they're trying to position this as if it's like this amazing return, right? The tax equivalent yield is the death benefit. This is all the death benefit rate of return. That's like, if you died this year, here would be your rate of return. If you died this year, you'd have a 6% rate of return, average 10% tax equivalent rate of return. Okay, but the surrender value is the only rate of return. And so when you look at this, what's happening is, even the way this illustration is designed, which is really good, right? Like, this is the crazy part. 20 years out, you're only looking at a 3.33% net rate of return after all fees and expenses and everything like that. We can beat that by almost a full percentage point in a whole life policy, and you're not going to be in this policy, you're taking on a lot of risk in the IUL chassis to actually accomplish that. So it's absolutely mind-numbing that companies are getting away with selling this. This right here is not a good sales pitch. They're trying to kind of do this smoke and mirrors, being like, hey, look at the cash, look at the break-even point, but then look at this internal rate of return. It's not even like, this is on the death benefit. The cash value rate of return is absolutely atrocious. Like, I mean, really, really bad stuff. The rate of return long-term in this is 4.95%. Long-term, is that possible in a vacuum, in a very isolated situation, if things go absolutely perfect? Sure. But what I'll tell you is that I could show you, and this is my philosophy, and this is why I do what I do with whole life, because if I showed you this, I could show you an IUL, and you could get this 4.95%. Mind you, this is at 121 years old. 4.95% internal rate of return, net of all fees, and then of course you have the death benefit here as well that goes along with it. The thing is, whole life, all things being equal, is going to basically lock in 4.5 to 5% as well, internal rate of return during that period of time. And so let's just say this is kind of the rule of thumb when you do it the right way. And once again, I got to give this agent, credit, whoever did this, even though I got to smack them a little bit for not compliantly sharing the information. At least the illustration that they gave was not so outlandish. And to that point, I'll say this, in case the agent watching this, or if anybody out there is doing it like this. If you're doing this, which on the scale of relativity for IULs is like good practice, like they're not selling them improperly. They're being more transparent about the actual returns, in this column of what the expectations should be. So if you're going to do that, why not just include the whole illustration? Why get like out of compliance and just send these illustrations that don't matter? But once again, what I'm hoping is they didn't do that they sent the full illustration, and maybe the person who sent this to me is the one who extracted it. I don't know. That's my hope. But all that aside, look at this. We got 4.95% in the IUL, is what I say all the time, and it just confirms. IUL gives the potential of 0.5% basis points, or 50 basis points, 0.5 percentage points of upside potential for a whole life policy, right? So you can see if whole life is going to get you 4.5%, this is going to illustrate 4.95% on the IUL side. I'll tell you that historically, that doesn't actually happen. And so what you're doing is you're taking on and risking $500,000 in premium, almost, or $250,000 in premium, I think is what they paid, right? $234,000 in premium no, my bad. Where's the cumulative premium? I want to make sure I get the numbers right. I don't want to screw that up. $246,000 in premium is what they paid. And so like, what they're doing is they're risking $246,000 effectively And instead of just taking the 4.5%, they're trying to squeak this half a percent extra return, but they don't realize they're putting all 250K in premium at risk and they could lose it, right? Like that's a problem. So now let's take a look. All right, so now we got the charges. Okay, this is good. I haven't seen this yet. So now when we look at this, we have the cost of insurance, we have all this stuff. So you can see 4% fees is what he's saying. So basically what he did there is he took total charges, 10,145, and he divided by 248,000. So that got him the 4% in fees. Okay. So he can see the fees are going down and down. And once again, this is on the scale of relativity. This is a well-designed IUL policy. I like to look at year 10. They've put in 250,000 over 5 years, and they've got 295,000. Once again, that's assuming the 7% internal rate or crediting rating, which is to me not even realistic. And once again, I've done a lot of videos showing why that's not realistic. And historically, what you can expect an IUL to do is like 5 to 5.5%, or 5.5% on the upside is what you can kind of expect. And the rule of thumb is, like, think about it this way: the life insurance company, if they could get you this 7% predictably, they'd be going and doing it for themselves. The life insurance company is getting right now between 4.5% to 5% in their general fund. If they could get you that 7% safely and predictably, the way they're illustrating it with no risk, this is why I'm saying your risk is huge. It may not seem like a lot, but 7% minus 5% is 2%, right? So 2% is the increase of the return compared to what the general fund is getting. If you go 2 divided by 5, that's a 40% increase in return that the life insurance company is saying they can get these clients. If they could do that for you, they'd be doing it for their general account, and they're not doing that, right? So it's just important to understand the dynamics of how this works, and you got to understand the internal moving pieces. Now, what happens here is you could see this cost of insurance, the overall costs and fees in it, going down because of the fact that the net amount at risk here is shrinking. So you can always see, and you could see, and it doesn't show it here, but basically what you have is the cash value, or the death benefit minus the cash value is the net amount at risk. So that's one thing to understand. So death benefit minus cash value equals net amount at risk. So when we look at that, that's where the net amount at risk gets small as we get older, and it is what it is. Now, what do I have here? Cost of insurance goes back into play as we get older. When we hit over 100 years old, the fees get lower the longer you hold the contract. Obviously, if you're living that long, these death benefits, this is assuming the policy is there based on a 7% crediting rating. Once again, here's the other thing. This is why having the full ledger that I haven't seen, they didn't show here. Every IUL, I'm going to do this over here. Every IUL has 3 different ledgers, okay? They do a guaranteed, they do a midline assumption, and then they do a current assumption. In this scenario, they're showing the current assumption at 7%. And so then it ran out all the numbers that they had, and it showed the policy lasting to 121, and it showed it thriving with a lot of cash value, right? The midline assumption, I guarantee, would probably run, my guess is at like 4.5% to 5%, maybe 5%. And the midline assumption, even with that reduction, because of the cost of insurance and all that stuff, because remember, if we go back here and we're showing this cost of insurance, these cost of insurance numbers are all based on, I went too far. These cost of insurance numbers are all based, here we go, are all based, this column right here, are all based on the net amount at risk, okay? So if you have years where the crediting isn't 7, it's 5, well, then the cash value doesn't go up so much. So therefore, the net amount at risk is going to be higher because the death benefit minus the cash value is going to be there. And so as you get older, these numbers really start to compound against you. And so then when we go over here, you look at the guaranteed, and I bet you this guarantee probably lasts until you're like, my guess is 85 years old, is my guess when the guarantee on that lasts. And maybe the midline will make you to 95 to 100 or something like that. and then it'll lapse, right? And I don't know, I haven't seen it, but typically based on what I'm seeing, that's typically what happens based on the numbers and the assumptions that are at play here. And remember, this is a well-designed, relatively speaking, IUL policy. And so when I look at this, I go, all right, if just common sense, if you're looking for something of this nature, the rule of thumb that I would say is that as a 65-year-old who's looking to buy an IUL, actually, or looking to buy any kind of policy, what I want to do is I want to actually go back and check one thing out that I forgot to look at. So now what we do is let's look at the surrender value. Like look at the policy value and the surrender value. So the policy value here is 329, 326. So that means there's still surrender charges, 341, 339, 350, where the policy value and the surrender value add up. That means there are 15 years surrender period. Okay, so 15-year surrender period means you're not even out of surrender in this policy where you have fees, so you shouldn't even touch this money at all during this time without real risk until you're 79 years old. So if you had any need, any inkling, any desire to touch this before you're 79 years old, you're running the risk. Now, the other thing is this person who did the illustration for you didn't even show income coming out of this. So if you're planning on taking income, you need to see an illustration that shows income coming out of the policy to make sure it works. And if you can't do that, then you just shouldn't play ball. If they're not willing to show it. My guess is they're not willing to show it to you because it ends up looking pretty atrocious, right? And so looking at these numbers, that it becomes a no-brainer. Like this is one of the worst things that I see, and I see it all the time, is that we're talking about the fact that you're 65 years old. If you put the money in there and you have a surrender period going on and you start taking loans against it, like let's say at your 6, when you're still deep in the surrender period, you still got a decade left of surrender in the policy, right? And so when you look at that, I would say taking those loans out are really risky. I didn't see anything else on the illustration because they didn't show it to me, that they didn't provide it to you or you didn't send it to me. And so if that's the case, what happens is I'm not sure if there's a overloan protection rider on the policy. If there's no overloan protection, or even if there is an overloan protection rider, which most of the time on these IULs there absolutely is, but they typically don't kick in until 75 years old. So if you started taking income at say 71 and something went really wrong and the income that you were tapping into made it to the point where you got a lapse notice, you'd either have to come out of pocket substantially at 74, 75 years old to keep this thing going, or if it lapsed and you didn't have the money to pay for the premium because you lost your money in this policy, you're going to get hit with a tax bill for all the loans that you had, not just the money you took out, but the loan income above and beyond your cost basis. So those are all just things to think about, things to consider. Once again, on a scale of design, I will say that whoever designed this, my guess is they followed Doug Andrew because of the fact that it's a level death benefit funded at the 5-pay with a guideline level premium, and it's all pretty cookie cutter standard, exactly what Doug Andrew does. I've seen a lot of Doug Andrew proteges that do things, in different ways than Doug teaches, and they, whatever, and they try to like outsmart the system. But this person is pretty prototypical and has just kind of followed the system, and they actually did a good job of doing right by the client, considering what they had access to. That said, this thing is still a ticking time bomb. I wouldn't touch it with a 30-foot pole. And yeah, that's it. Hopefully it helps. If you're watching this and you found value in it, like, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you're notified every time I launch a new video. If you have an IUL illustration that you want me to review, send it to me. I'm reviewing it. I'm going to be doing whole playlists just on illustration reviews because I keep getting more and more people asking me to do them. So even when I'm traveling, like I am right now, I'm happy to hop on. I got my new traveling vibe board tablet that I'm able to do this with. So it's pretty cool. It's going to enable me to do this content more and more regularly. So I don't have to slow down my content while I'm on the road. So anyway, that is it. Hope you have a blessed, inspirational